So when you run into these gang members when you're walking the streets, I mean, are they all standoffish? Do some listen to you? Have some got off the streets?
We also understand, as Mr. Greg has already said, if the only hood I know is my hood, I don't realize there's a whole lot of other hoods out here.
What does a biblical man look like? Like, how does that reflect in your all's image? And then how do you pass that down to the 16 men that you all are ministering to and discipling in a lot of ways?
I remember the first time I was arrested, and I always share this with the young men when I go into schools and different places and speak. I was 10 years old. I broke in someone's garage and stole a bicycle.
So welcome to the 610 podcast. So obviously I've got my sidekick, Alex, and our two guests. You want to go ahead and introduce yourself, guys?
Yes, my name is Gregory Pal.
I'm Reverend Matthew Smiser.
Man, Bobby Schiavone introduced us, a few months ago? We've been down twice to see you guys.
A couple of months ago, yes, sure.
And we've got the SOY Ministries, nonprofit. Again, it's one of the 22, I think, nonprofits we have at Creek Brothers.
Yep.
And we had Bobby on as a guest a few weeks ago. And, he was talking about SOY. So I know he's fired up for you guys to be on here today. So pleasure you taking the time to do this today. And we just want to hear your stories and where you're from, what you're doing, and what Jesus has meant in your life and your journey. Because I know you've had a very interesting journey, and I love hearing it, and love for our viewers to hear more.
Yes. Well, I go first. So, as I said, my name is Gregory Pal. As a young man, I grew up in the projects, which was called Cotton Home in Southwick, and there was a world and a life of crime in the projects where I grew up at. And that's where I learned how to sell drugs, how to rob, steal, do all the bad things that I did in my life. And from 10 years old to my adult life till I was 28 years old, I was in and out of juvenile institutions, in and out of jail and prison. And I remember the first time I was arrested, and I always share this with the young men when I go into schools and different places and speak. I was 10 years old. I broke in someone's garage and stole a bicycle and a lawnmower, and I was arrested. I was sent away to a juvenile institution, and I spent about 10 months there, and I got out, and it just became a repeat cycle. I went from stealing, breaking in somebody's garage, to breaking in someone's house, stealing out of stores, stealing cars, snatching old lady pocketbooks on the bus stop, robbing people, shot somebody, and then I killed somebody. And what I call that is the snowball effect. And I tell young people is that, like, you know how a snowball, you make it and it starts off real small and you keep rolling and rolling. What does it do? It gets bigger. And so that's what happened from 10 years old to stealing, breaking in somebody's garage, stealing a bicycle and a lawnmower. Then at 28 years old, I killed somebody. So all my life, I was in and out of trouble. And so the last time I went to prison, actually when I was 18, getting ready to turn 19 years old. So I went to prison for robbery, assault, burglary. And so I spent 6 years in prison that time. No, matter of fact, I spent 8 years in prison. And when I was returned back to society, evidently I didn't learn nothing from the first 8 years that I spent in prison, because after 4 years I was returned back to prison. But before I was turned to prison, I was facing the death penalty for killing somebody, taking somebody's life because it was a drug deal that went bad and somebody was shot and killed. And I went, and they was trying me for the death penalty for this charge that I was arrested for because of the aggravating factors on the case. And that's when I really began to learn about what law was, because I didn't have a clue what aggravating factors was or nothing. And that's when you rob somebody and kill somebody, or shoot somebody and kill somebody, or rob somebody, or burglary, murder, rape, murder, robbery, murder. that's what they call aggravating factor, and that's what make you eligible for the death penalty. So they tried me for the death penalty, which they didn't convict me because they found out what it was all about drugs and this and that, but they still ended up giving me 75 years in prison with 37 and a half years to the parole board. And I always tell these young people when I talk to them, I said, so just imagine this. In 1990, I was sentenced to 37 and a half years on a 75-year sentence. So when you do the math, I'm still supposed to be sitting in prison right now as I sit here. But the prison didn't get tired of me and said, Greg, we're gonna let you out. I didn't have no money, didn't no lawyer get me out, didn't no warden say, well, we're gonna open the prison doors and let you out. I always say that it was God. It was the grace of God and God's mercy that opened those prison doors and let me out. Because what other reason would I be sitting here today if it wasn't for the grace of God? Because I didn't have the money to bail myself or get myself out of prison. But what I did do when I went to prison, as they say, I worked those steps and I worked those programs in prison while I was in there. I just wasn't one of those guys that went to prison, just sat around, lift weights, fight, play basketball. Because what I've learned about prison is it had a lot of opportunities for you to advance and change your life around. They had school, they had college, they had vocational trades, they had self-help groups in there, and I worked them. I went to AA, I went to NA, I went to valid offenders classes, I went to Pathfinders. I did work all the programs, did all the steps. I got 3 vocational trades while I was in there: carpentry, upholstery, and masonry. I ended up getting 2 college degrees while I was there in hotel and restaurant management and sociology. So one thing that I learned about prison is when you go meet the parole board, your record never changes. Every time they look at that file, that don't change. And so when they look in your folder and see that all these things that you done did all your life, but what I found out is you can change people's minds and you can change people's perspective about you. So even though my record never changed, but my behavior changed, my attitude changed, my will to try to get back into society changed, because I was the first guy that they ever took from inside a prison out into society in handcuffs, shackles, and an orange jumpsuit to go into schools, churches, job corps, to speak to young men about my life, because the warden of that prison, and I like to say this guy's name because he has been a mentor to me, he has been a role model to me, and it's a real nice story that a warden and an inmate has became friends. I have actually ate dinner with this guy. I have, and this is a story that is unbelievable. It's made for the books, really. I was flying out to Las Vegas one time to watch the Floyd Mayweather's fight, and he was flying to Denver, Colorado to see his newborn grandson. And I ended up getting on the plane and they set me right in the same seat with him. Right. And it was just unbelievable. And from that day forward, me and him built a special bond and a special relationship. I have, he was teaching at a U of L. He was a professor out there, and he brought me in to speak to his class. He has brought me out to different venues that he has spoke at to tell my story, because people think and tell me all the time that, Greg, you have an amazing story. Why don't you write a book? And I have thought about it, but people see, like, they know me, they see the change in me, which I realize that I have changed. But what other people see in me is just awesome, because people knew me when I was in the streets, and they see me now as the person who is the man that I have become today. And when I got out of prison, I made a commitment to myself that I was never, ever going to return to prison if I ever got out. And once I got out, I've been doing the work that I do today. I've been doing it from day one. And I've been out of prison now 18 years.
Praise God.
And so, and I've been working with young people trying to stir their life down the right path, because I don't want to see young men, because when I was growing up, like I was telling people, and I tell these young men, I didn't have a Mr. Gregory in my life.
Sure.
I didn't have a Reverend Smiser in my life. I had drug dealers, pimps, robbers, dope dealers. Those was my role models. Those was the guys that I looked up to. I didn't have positive people in my life that I could look up to and say, I want to be like that guy when I grow up. I didn't know what it was like to go stay in a $100,000 house.
Sure.
Or go ride in a nice car or a nice truck. Those things wasn't a part of my life, so I only went by what I seen and what I went through in my life. So when I got out of prison in 2008, so let me back up for a minute. So while I was in prison, I lost both my grandparents on my mother and my dad's side. I lost my mom 2 days after 9/11. I'll never forget it. On 9/13, I lost my mom. In 2007, I lost my oldest brother while I was in prison. So these are things, like I tell people, the jewelry, the cars, the money, all that thing that the police took from me when I went to prison. Those are material things.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can get them back, but you can't get your parents back. You can't get your grandparents back. You can't get your family back. These things that you lose while you're in there. And I'll never forget when my mom passed away and I went to her funeral and I had to go in handcuffs and shackles with an orange jumpsuit on to view my mama's body. This is what people don't understand who is out here. And I try to tell these young men who has their parents in their life, you better really gravitate to your parents, and you better really, while you have your parents in your life, you better, as the Bible tell you, honor their mother and their father while they're here. And that's what you should do, because, you know, I just think about my mom. Even though she was my number one fan, she was also my number one critic. And she always used to tell me, Gregory, if you do not get your life together, you're going to wind up in the graveyard of the penitentiary. And she was right. And even though I didn't wind up in the graveyard, I spent 26 years of my life incarcerated. And because I did 8 years the first time and I did 18 years the second time. So, and like I tell these young people, I did more time in prison than y'all are old. You know, the oldest kid in our program is 17 years old, and I spent 26 years of my life in prison. So I done did more time in prison than y'all are old. And I try to make these young men understand, if you don't listen to me, who are you going to listen to? I'm telling you what not to do and what to do, and how you can change your life and become a better person. And sometimes, you know, people ask me all the time, Greg, if you had one thing to change about your life, what would it be? And I tell them nothing. And I get a lot of oohs and ahs at that sometimes, but that's how I really feel. I wouldn't change nothing, because if I didn't go to prison and I didn't do the things that I do in my life, that I did in my life, I wouldn't probably even be here, right? Because God like to use people who has been through some things.
Right on.
You know, just like he used Paul, you know, he couldn't use me if I didn't go through what I went through in my life. And so to be able to speak into young men's lives and change their lives around, God had to use somebody like me to do it. And these young men, they gravitate to me. Matter of fact, I just seen a young man the other day as I was walking in the mall, and he stopped me. He said, "Excuse me, sir, what's your name?" And I told him. He said, "You came to U of L about 3 years ago, and you was speaking." He was going through what he was telling me. And I said, "Yeah, it was me." And that just made me feel good to hear this young man say that he still remember my story and what I said to him. And he was out there at the mall working in a store. He told me he had just had a baby, and he was and working, had a job, trying to, make sure that his child is born, gonna have whatever he can when he come into this world. That's why he was working. And I get that all the time from young men that I might see, and they remember me and they remember my story. That's the reward that I really get out of this.
Well, I know when we had dinner, I asked you, do you have any regrets? And you're like, none. And I was like, wow, we've got so much to unpack there.
Yeah. A couple things come to mind. When you were speaking, you hit on a couple things that I speak about all the time, which is people chase whatever they're close to, right? And you said that your role models were drug dealers, pimps, things in that nature. So like in what I hear, we had dinner, you told us like you both intentionally take men that are in the environment there and you expose them to things that you didn't have a chance to get exposed to at a young age. I would love to hit on that a little bit. And also, how did you two meet?
Well, I want to get
Yeah, how did you two meet? I want to hear this story as well.
Well, I think, and I don't know if Greg was in that particular group or not, but out of frustration that we weren't seemingly making a difference into the lives of the most vulnerable, which is middle school boys, especially the African American boys who were seemingly wilding out. I had called a meeting through Kenny Boyd, who was a mutual friend of ours. And I had the meeting over in Portland, and I think I ordered pizza or something to talk with a group of men, because I always felt that the issue was we had the wrong people at the table. As a pastor, as a missional leader, I felt like we had the wrong people kind of giving direction and guidance to us. We had people who had PhD degrees who had read a book but had not lived a life, trying to tell us how to solve some of the issues and problems. And so I got with Kenny Boyd and we sat down and had a conversation. And I said, you know what? I want to talk to the people who's been there, done that, and have learned from that experience. So I called a meeting and Kenny got there were about 25 folks. I think Mr. Greg was a part of that meeting. We had it over in Portland. And I said, I don't know what to do. And I'm asking you guys, how can we make a difference in these young men's life? Because we owe it to them. We owe it to them to do our best to give guidance and leadership in a way that will create productive citizens. I said, and we're not doing it. It's getting worse. The thing that stuck out to me predominantly in the meeting was, I don't know if it was Mr. Greg who said it or if it was someone else who said, I don't want to meet with you no more. And I thought, wow, that was pretty cold. But everybody in the room had their own story, their own stint about their journey and time that they spent incarcerated. Everybody in the room had been incarcerated. And I said, really? I said, what would make you say that? And he said, because all you guys seem to want to do is meet. When you get ready to do something, let me know. When you get ready to make a move, let me know. And one gentleman who had spent 8 years incarcerated he was a high school ref in baseball and football. He had his own business, but he also had a lawn care business. And he said, I tell you what, you pick a block, you raise the money to pay 2 or 3 young men on that block. I'll bring my equipment. What we'll do on a Saturday morning, we'll just go out and find seniors and we'll cut their grass. And he said, but you got to promise me you would not call the TV stations, you would not call the radio stations, because that's not what we're about. As a matter of fact, if we do it, they'll find us, because they're going to want to know who is it that's going around town cutting the grass of senior citizens at no charge to them. So it was that type of thing that got me to a point where I said, if we're going to be successful, then this is the group that I need to look to for leadership, to help us to understand. And then through Youth Alive, which was a program that Mr. Kenny had, he came together with Mr. Greg, and we came and we sat down. Mr. Greg had already started a youth program, but I think it was it COVID that caused it to kind of wane, and then we came up with SOY. So that's how we actually met, and I was not only impressed with his story, but I was impressed with his commitment.
Sure.
And I think to me that's what won me over was his commitment, because at the time and up until even now, I didn't have dollars to pay him to do what he did, but he said, you know what, I don't do this for pay. I do this because this is my heart, this is my mission, this is my challenge from God. And if I don't make a penny, I'm going to still do it. So I'm going to either do it with you, I'm going to do it with someone else. And out of that commitment, we have formed a bond. And out of that bond, we kind of felt like that we do have an opportunity. God has given us an opportunity to make a difference in the lives of these young men. And it's just how we're going to go about doing that was important. And then the other side of the coin was whether folk agree or disagree, Mr. Greg still has street juice. Although he's changed his life, the respect that those that are even on the wrong side still has for him, I felt like was tremendous. So not only did we feel safe in that space, but I felt like that I finally got the right person at the table where we can make a difference. And then from there, it's just been what it's been. We've been able to take these young men, which was amazing to me. We took them to the Muhammad Ali Center right here in Louisville, and these young men had never been to the Muhammad Ali Center. My biggest joy, we took them to a formal banquet. And one of the young men, and none of them had ties. None of them had a sports jacket. And Mr. Green was kind of demanding that we're going to put on ties. We're gonna get you guys sports jackets, and we did. Teach you how to tie a tie, which we did. And one of the young men, when he got to the guardhouse where this formal banquet was being held, looked at himself in the mirror and said, "I look like a young president." That brought about pride. And so we begin to see the difference. And so we have 7 principles that we try to instill in these young men. And we understand if we can get those 7 principles instilled in them, then that is going to make a difference. And those principles are integrity, discipline, self-respect, leadership, empathy, academic performance, and community involvement. If we can instill in them those principles, then we know that's life-changing. And we also understand, as Mr. Greg has already said, if the only hood I know is my hood, I don't realize there's a whole lot of other hoods out here. So the exposure piece of it is what is also important, because if you don't know that there is a whole vast world out here, then you won't know that there's other things that you need to consider, that you need to aspire to, because their environments, as Mr. Greg's story points out very plainly, what I learned in my environment is how do I survive in my environment, not how do I survive to be a productive citizen. I just need to learn how to navigate this area that I'm in. If it's drug infested, if it's whatever the case may be, I'm learning how to survive in this context.
Wow. I've got so many questions for both of you, but to back up for a moment, a lot of our listeners are not from here. So describe, where is Portland? Where is the West End? Is the West End the same as East End Louisville? Just give a little.
Well, the West End, legally, West Louisville, supposed to be from First Street, going west.
Okay.
From Main Street, I guess, clean over to beyond Algonquin Parkway. But what's identified as the West End is 9th Street, going west to the river, and from Main Street going pretty much now, and I think they're moving it to PRP, Pleasures Park. So that particular area is considered West End. Portland is considered from the river, from 15th Street, going west, all the way to Shawnee Park, from the river coming south to Main or Market Street is the Market Street is considered the Portland area. So you have Portland, then next to Portland you have what is called the Shawnee area. So that Shawnee area, I think it's from 34th Street to 45th out to the Shawnee Park, and then from Market, I think over a couple of 3-4 blocks, maybe closer to Broadway. So those are the areas. When you hear Portland, when you hear Shawnee, when you hear Parkland, that's all considered West
Okay.
Louisville, or the West End.
And is it safe, fun?
You know, this is what I contend. I contend that people who've never really been to the West End, that their thoughts are framed from the news that they get, and news in the local in our city. The first 15 minutes of news is who killed who shot who robbed who, and I think our newspapers have an affinity to the fact that if it doesn't bleed, it don't lead. That's why it leads off with all of this negative stuff. But there's only about 15% of the people who actually live in West Louisville is creating the havoc. But if all you listen to is the news, you think that the entire West Louisville is a horrible place, when the reality is 85% of the people who live in West Louisville are hardworking people. They get up every day, they go to work, they support their families, they do what is responsible, what a responsible adult or caretaker or what have you would do. But if that's all you ever hear, and that's what's influencing your thoughts, then you would think, I can't go to the West End of Louisville because I would be in some sense of danger, when the reality is, no, some of the nicest people that you ever want to meet in your life is living in West Louisville, or is from West Louisville. I am a product of West Louisville. So I think that's to me an issue. I've been blessed to be on the board, and I've rotated off, and I think they made an emeritus of the West End Boys School, a founding board member of that school that has done such great and fantastic work. And our decision from day one was that we wanted to target middle school boys. It's a boarding school. Now we actually have first grade to eighth grade. And we just added the girls' dorm to the school, so we will be receiving application for that. But the goal was to show young people that regardless of where you live, what side of the tracks you live on, God did not give out brains and ability to people who only live in certain part of town. And I'll say this one thing before I move on, and that is Robert Blair, who was the headmaster, who was a former headmaster at Kentucky Country Day, who had that dream and passion, along with myself and Dr. A. Russell Orchard, a couple more, Paul Perconte, a couple of more people that wanted to actually let the world know that creating the right environment, anybody can learn, anybody can succeed, anybody can find success. He made a statement once that really captured my attention and has been seared in my mind. He said that there are people living in East Louisville, which is all of, I guess, everything east of what would be considered maybe Taylorsville Road, who's been to Europe and to Asia and to Paris and to all these places, have never taken the 17-minute drive from East Louisville to West Louisville.
I say that pretty often, actually. You know, I travel all across, and I think it's hard sometimes to get people to, I can get someone to go to Africa for a mission trip, but I can't get someone to travel 30 minutes down to the West End, which is, it blows my mind at times. And I think it comes back to the misconception of the news and other areas. I heard you say something twice, and I want to lean into it a little bit. It was the middle school boys, middle school men, young men are like the target point. Why is that? Why is that such a area where there's so much risk, so many things? Like, what's going on with that?
Well, just like the SOY program, we are actually 10 to 17, really. That's an age when young men are coming into their own. They are at a very vulnerable point in their life simply because they're trying to make a decision on what I'm going to do, who I'm going to be. What's going to influence me? Because left untouched, then they're going to gravitate towards what they see. So if they made up in their mind that they're going to be a Tupac Shakur, then that's who they have on their mind that they're going to pattern their life after. But if we can show them at that vulnerable time in their life when decisions are being made, when they're coming into their own, when they're coming into moving from that kind of adolescence area of a child to the beginning of what will be a manhood, this time is crucial and critical. And decisions they make at the age of 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 can totally affect their entire lives. So if we're not pouring some positive imagery into their lives, if we're not showing them that this world is much bigger than your backyard, if we're not helping them to see that they can achieve anything that they want to achieve if they put their mind to it, get the right guidance, and come with a commitment. That's why that particular age group is chosen, because that's when some critical life decisions are being made. And as we look at the statistic, we look at the crime that we have, when you got 12, 13, most of the carjackings for a long time, I don't know if that's still the stats, I haven't looked at them lately, was being done by 12, 13, and 14-year-olds. Now, the bottom line is, eventually you're going to get caught. When you get caught, you got a felony on your record. And although you might go to juvie and get out, you're going to still have that on your record for the rest of your life. So a felony is not just a sentence where you go do your time and get out. A felony, unless you get it expunged, is a life sentence, which prevents you from actually achieving everything that you need to achieve.
So I got a question for both of you. For you, what is the percent of broken homes for these boys that come to SOY without a father?
Great question.
Well, I can answer that because mostly out of 16 of our boys, only 2 of them got their dad in their life.
So 2 have their dad in their life. When you started stealing bikes at 10, did you have a father in your life?
No,
Did you ever have a father in your life?
no,
Ever?
no.
Yeah, I can relate to that. And that's where I was leaning into. Yeah, I grew up without a father. And what I hear you say is the idea of having a man not present can make you lean to the world and be like, hey, what does a man look like? Who is a man? And you journey through what is like manhood through the eyes of the world. And it's, hey, get money, get women, do these things. And then you're a man. And that's a dangerous road to travel down. I'd love to hear from you all the concept of like, what does a biblical man look like? Like, how does that reflect in your all's image? And then how do you pass that down to the 16 men that you all are ministering to and discipling in a lot of ways?
Well, I think what a biblical man looks like is just what God has put in play and in place for all of us. And that is that you do have integrity, that you do, well, number one, you do love God and you understand who God is. And number two, you understand that there is a responsibility for you. As God made Adam and then made Eve, he gave Adam certain responsibilities that he expected Adam to fulfill. And that hasn't changed. As a man, then as a godly man, there's a certain responsibility that is expected of us. We are expected to lead, not govern in a sense, or shadow power over, but to lead. A leader never pushes from behind. A leader is always out front, and therein lay a difference. I think a godly man is that when you give your word, that your word is bond, that means actually something. When you say that you're going to do something, you're expected to do it. And then I think the other side is that God gives us opportunity and gifts that will enable us to find jobs, get jobs, work jobs, take care of our family, be responsible with everything that comes with that. I think, but loving God first is the first and foremost thing that a godly man is about. And I think from that perspective, everything else begins to open up to us.
And let me piggyback off something he's saying before it slips my mind. So when I went to prison, my son's mom was pregnant with my son, right? So when I got out of prison, my son was 18 years old, right? And he was in foster care. Well, matter of fact, he was 17, getting ready to turn 18. So when I went to his foster mom, she said to me, I'm not trying to keep your son from you. If you show me that you really want to be involved in his life and you want to be a part of his life, we can go to court and you can have your son. And we ended up going to court because, like I said, when I got out of prison, I knew what my mind was made up to do. And that was one of the first things that I wanted to do, was to get my son. And I ended up getting custody of my son. I moved him in. I had got married at the time I got out of prison. I moved my son in with me. And we began to build a relationship because I had to understand that he's 8, he's getting ready to turn 8, he's getting ready to be a man. And all these years I've been out of his life, right? So I couldn't just come in and act like I was the greatest dad in the world, right? So we had to build a relation. He had to get to know me. I had to get to know him. But it's one thing that I did tell my son, and that we sat down and I told him, I can't change what didn't happen. What didn't happen didn't happen. It's in the past. I want to move. We can move forward. I'm sorry, son, that I missed all your best years of your life, but I'm here for you now. Let's start from here and move forward. And that's what we did. And when my son started having kids, when he had his kids, and this is what I was saying to him when I seen how his life was changing, gradually changing to the streets like me. And so the whole time I was in prison, some of my friends, even some of my family members, put in his head how your dad was the man out here. And when I say that about my lifestyle, selling drugs, having the jewelry, having the cars, having the money, and they fed that to him. But when I got out of prison, he didn't see the man that he heard about. All the stories that he was told, that ain't who he was seeing. He was seeing a total different man. He was seeing a man who was disciplined, who was respectful, who was a role model, who was a leader, who wasn't the things that he was told about, right? And it kind of frustrated him, right? So here's what I wanted him to understand. Now that you have kids in your life, this is what I want you to understand. You know how it felt when you was going from foster home to foster care, from pillar to post. You know how that felt. Don't do that to them. Don't make your sons feel like you feel. Be a father to them. Get involved in their life. Go to their baseball games. Go to their football game. Spend quality time with them. You know, you out here selling drugs, buying them tennis shoes, buying them jogging suits. That don't mean nothing. You got to be involved in their life. You got to, because I'm only their granddaddy. You're their father. And when my son was murdered 2 years ago, and one of his sons, he was kind of like trying to follow in his dad's footsteps a little bit. He was kind of acting up, having a lot of, and I don't want to say I made him, but I had him to stand right in front of his father's casket, and I made him stand there and don't move throughout the whole funeral, because I wanted him to understand that if you don't change your life, that's where you're going to be at.
So how old was your son when he was murdered?
He was 33.
And was he murdered on the streets,
Yes.
doing what you used to do?
Yes.
So that frustration you speak about, he was frustrated with you. Did you all have a good relationship in that time
Yes.
frame?
Yes. We had built, me and my son had built a real tight bond. I mean, from the day I got out of prison until, but when I began to see it, probably about 21, 22 is when he really, because I had even wanted him to be involved with me because he seen what I was doing with the boys at SOY. Because before SOY, like Reverend Smiser has spoke about, I had another program called the Oasis before we started SOY. So when the COVID hit, the program folded because we couldn't mitigate with the young men and all that. So that program crashed. And then Kenny called me one day, Kenny Boy, who he spoke about. He said, Greg, we got to do something, man. We are losing because we lost 7 of our young men during that COVID period. We lost 5 of them to gunshot violence, and we lost 2 of them in high-speed chases with the police, right? So Kenny said, Greg, we have to do something. Kenny introduced me to Reverend Smiser. We sat down, and we came up with SOY because of so much tragedy with the Oasis program. We revamped it, changed the name from Oasis to SOY, which stands for Save Our Youth.
Save our youth.
And so that's how we navigated that. And my son, I started seeing the change in him, in his behavior, staying out late, you know, cars, jewelry. And I already knew what he was doing. And this when I had the conversation with him about his children. And, unfortunately, my son's no longer here. And this is what I wanted him to really get. I wanted him to get that and not spend your life in prison like I did. I never imagined or thought that would happen to him, because we don't think of our sons or our daughters getting murdered or killed. But when my son did get murdered, it's like, I guess like my mother used to always tell me, like, she's like, I'm just waiting one day when I get that knock on the door or I get that phone call. She's like, it's not even going to shock me because look how you carry your life. Look at your lifestyle. You need to change your life. And I used to have these same conversations with my son, and I really thought that he would get what I was trying to tell him about, because he knew how it felt to be without his mom and his dad. Because at the time, my son, when I was in prison, his mother was a crackhead, right? She was on drugs, she was in prostitution. So she wasn't there in his life, and I wasn't in because I was incarcerated. And even though my family was there sometime to support him or whatever, but he was rebellious against them because he was angry, mad, because I wasn't there. His mom was on drugs. Then he had to get taunted and teased from kids about his mom and all that. So I know all that played a part in it, so that's what ended up happening. And I hate that happened to my son, and it still haunts me right now to this day because I know that him being murdered, I can't help but to feel guilty about it because I wasn't there in his life for 18 years to help him to be, as Reverend Smiser was speaking about, to be the man, to see the working man. He's seen that in his later years. But if he'd have seen the same man growing up, and I would have been involved in his life, then maybe he wouldn't be where he is today.
So is it though he saw you in the later life? Is it just like what made you want to start stealing bicycles at 10? What made him want to be on the streets selling drugs at 30? Is it the fix? Is it the
No,
what is it?
it's survival. It's systemic oppression in the sense that you're living in a world where you see others who have nice things, but you don't have access to those same things. You don't have access to those same opportunities. When you're falling under years of systemic oppression, when you're looked at as a second-class citizen, when although you're supposed to be free in this country, then no, that's not the case. When you're judged by the color of your skin, when you are looked at to be something less than who you really are, and not afforded the same opportunities and never allowed to be on the same playing field, we try to teach these boys, we don't want you to be begging nobody for any handout. What we want you to understand is if you're given an opportunity to be on the same playing field, you can get and achieve any and everything that you want. The problem is far beyond the fix. It's far beyond the glit and glamour. It's about survival. How do I survive in a world where there's two pictures being put before me, and yet I don't have opportunity, or the same opportunity as my counterpart when I go to school or when I'm in a different setting other than in my house? So if I can't make money, if I got to live in these projects, which are government assistance, which if you know anything about Cotter Home or Southwick, they were cinder block apartment complexes. Um, if that is the life for me, but yet I see people who have a nice home that's got yards, that's got a fence around their backyard. All I'm asking for is opportunity, and when that's denied me, then I'm gonna get it the best way I know how.
So how do we get to the 85% though? Because in the West End, you said 85% are hardworking people.
Yeah, they are.
So how do we get the other 15% off the streets? Because afford them the same opportunities that those 85% have.
Well, don't misunderstand 85%. The 85% is still oppressed.
No, I understand that.
They're
You said
still
hardworking. They're not.
Yeah, it's just that their attitude towards life is, I'm going to take what I have and do the best I can with it. Where the other attitude of the 15% is, I'm going to take advantage of everything I see out here to get what I want. And then I think you also have to understand, when we look at the mean income of those living in the East End of Louisville, it's around 65, 70,000 a year. When you're looking in the West End of Louisville, it's 25,000 to 30,000 a year. When you look at the difference, you got to ask yourself that question. When you look at the fact that insurance for those in certain zip codes, 40210, 40211, 40212, is 3 times higher than those who are in 40291 and 40222. And so what doesn't matter about your driving record that causes that type of increase. And so when you look at that, when you look at the redlining that has taken place, when you look at this, again, the systemic years and years of oppression, then you have to say that people are going to survive one way or the other. You got that 85% who says, I'm still going to work hard. I'm going to trust God to supply my need. I'm going to do my best to take care of family. I have a tagline that I say all the time: I'm doing the best I can with a little bit I have. And they're doing the same thing. But then you have a different mentality who says, I'm not going to settle for that. If I got to go out here and take it, if I got to go out here and steal it, if I got to knock you in your head to get it, I want to live that life over there. Nobody talks about the trains that comes through West Louisville that stops at midnight and unloads guns. These young people that we deal with don't have the ability to have a train line that they are dealing with. We don't have helicopters or planes flying drugs into this city. So when you look at what's actually going on, then I think you have to think about, there's a lot that has to be changed. It's about the choice that comes down to it. Now, I never went to prison. That wasn't my journey, but I grew up dirt poor. I grew up in an area where at the age of 6 and 7, I was actually, at that time, we didn't have furnaces. You had a wood burning stove. There was a man, Mr. Turner, on the corner who sold blocks of wood. He got those blocks out of Louisville Bat Company when they were over on Jackson Street, and they would give them to him. He would go pick them up, and when they would cut the ends, when they were lathe and they cut the ends off, those were blocks that he would get and that he would sell for $5 a bushel. Well, at 6 years old, I got a wheelbarrow carrying bushels of these blocks to different people in the neighborhood, because everybody in the neighborhood had a wood burning stove. That's how you heat it. Some of them even still had a wood burning cook stove. We had gas stove at that time, which that was a blessing. So growing up in the environment, the difference was, for me anyway, was that I saw the same guys as I was going to school standing on the corner. When I get out of school coming home, I see the same guys, because then it wasn't busing, you walked. They were standing on the corner, and I made a determination in my mind. I said, you know what? It appears to me that there's only two type of people who lives in the oppressed neighborhood: the people who feel like this is all that life has for me, and the person who says, when I get an opportunity to do better, I'm gonna do better and rise up out of this. Amen. And so that was my choice. I said, when I get an opportunity to do better, then I will rise up out of this. But there are still people standing on the same corner, even, I guess, to this moment, if that corner still exists. So no, it's just not a fix. It's not it's not the glamour. It's the attitude of, how do I survive? Some choose that regardless, I'm going to work a job. I'm going to own my own little business. I'm going to make it happen. I am gifted. I am talented, and I can make it. And those who choose to say, no, I'm going to sell the drugs, I'm going to rob, I'm going to steal, and that's the way, that's my hustle. So the choice of the hustle is different, because there is such a thing as an honest hustle.
Yeah, people say money buy happiness, and I don't fully agree with that, but it does buy opportunities. And it doesn't provide opportunities for people to experience things. And I have noticed when I spend time, because I grew up towards the West End, not directly in it, but definitely towards the West End. And when you journey through the West End, you realize gas prices are higher. If you go shopping there, groceries are higher. There is definitely an oppression going on there, and it's sad when you look at it, because it's not good, because a lot of people, they can't get insurance, right? The insurance is 3 times as high. That means they can't afford to get a car, which means now they have to walk places, so then it's like stacking on. And I'm not against capitalism. I understand, like, capitalism is good for making money. But there's a whole other side of capitalism where it's like, let's take advantage of people and do things. And I think that's the negative side of capitalism, that according to where you grow up and what your experience is, you can be like, oh, this is why I don't like capitalism, because it's this way. It's built around oppression.
And what Reverend Smiser was saying, as far as like when he used to go to school and those guys would be standing on the corner, when he get out of school, they still standing there. So I spent, as I told you, 26 years of my life in prison, right? And some of the guys, when I went in prison, they're still doing the same exact thing when I first went in. To this day, they're doing the same things, right? And I see them every day, because as y'all know, my job every day is to walk from 18th to 30th, from Broadway to Market. That's my whole HR, as we call it, my target area that I work with gangs and shooters and killers. And I approach these guys and I talk to them every day. And I try to get them to come to the Goodwill for opportunity to make a difference in their life, to change their life, because some of my friends who I grew up with, they're still standing on the corners, selling drugs, doing the same things that they was doing when we was 18 and 19 years old. And they're my age, 63 and 60 and 50 years old, still doing the same exact things that they was doing when I went to prison, and they still doing the same things now. So where it changed for me was when I got out of prison, while I was still in prison, I had already made my mind up. Probably 5 years before I got out, that I already knew that I wasn't coming back to this type of life, and I was tired. It was just, I lost so much. And when I say, like, as I was telling you, it ain't the material things that I lost. It was my loved ones that I was lost. It was opportunity missing out on my daughter and my son's life. I didn't have grandchildren when I went in prison. When I got out, I had 4 grandchildren. So that all that played a part. And when I got out, you know, and I'm gonna just be honest and truth. I had guys coming to me, man, here's 10,000, here's a kilo of dope, here's pounds of weed, man, get you some money and all this and that. But there's no way that I would have ever touched that and went back to that lifestyle because I thought about all the things that I lost while I was in there. And I thought about I had to get my son out of the environment that he was in, meaning foster care. These are the things I wanted to build a relationship with my grandchildren. I wanted to build a new relationship with my daughter, with my son, and then get out, get me a job. Just like I just became a homeowner just this past August, right?
Congratulations.
I just brought me a house. These are the things that I think about that, like Reverend Smiser was saying, like 85% of the people in the West End are good people, and they are because I got good neighbors. Every day, I even feel the same way. Every day that I walk out of my door and I get ready to go to work, it feels good that I can stick my key in my door, lock my door when I'm getting ready to go to work, get in my truck, go to work. That makes me feel good because I never had that opportunity to ever do that. Now when I go in my house, I don't have to do this. I don't have to worry about thinking about somebody getting ready to come up, stick a gun in the back of my head and rob me, or the police kicking my door in. Now I can lay in my bed and sleep comfortable at night, without worrying about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. Here's the police kicking my door in, looking for drugs or looking for money, looking for guns or whatever. So, and I'm proud of where I'm at in my life today, because I know that everything that I have earned since I've been out of prison, I didn't sell no drugs to get it. I didn't rob nobody to get it. I didn't break in nothing to get it. I didn't steal nothing to get it. I didn't take nothing from nobody to get it. I worked my behind off to get everything that I have today. And I know that the opportunity and what Reverend Smiser was saying is the choices. It's the choices that we make in our life. I had a choice to either get out of prison and sell drugs again, or I had a choice to get out of prison and get a job and work like everybody else did. And that's what I decided to do.
So when you run into these gang members when you're walking the streets, I mean, are they all standoffish? Do some listen to you? Have some got off the streets?
Some and some of them, for the most part, most of them are standing off. I say out of this, say probably 30 or 40% of them listen.
Okay.
The other ones don't. They like, man, go on with that. We ain't trying, and they don't believe that the program works. And then I will have a guy who has went through the program that it has worked, and I have him to come and speak to the guys and tell them what the program did for him, And so we call that a success story. So we'll have the guy to come and speak and tell what, how Mr. Greg helped you and how you went through the program and what the program did for you. And it's a good program because if you're a gangbanger and I convince you to put your gun down, to put your bandanas down, and to come into this program, if you go through this program and you get a job and you get a trade, they will help you to get a car, because they have a car program which gets you back and forth to work. That way you don't have no excuse that you don't have no bus passes. Well, I couldn't get to work. So they got a car program which they help you to finance a car, and because they get donations from people who donate cars to them and trucks and stuff. So you'll have transportation to get back and forth to work. If you keep your job, complete the program, in 5 years, you can become a first-time homeowner because they will help you to buy a house and to finance your house. And now now they getting ready to build. We just got this news last week They getting ready to build apartment complexes on the Goodwill's property that they have behind the new hospital, that they're going to build efficiency apartments now where they don't even have to pay rent. They can go to this efficiency apartment rent free, water, utility, LG&E free until they help them to finance them a house.
And who's this program through?
Goodwill.
That's the Goodwill.
The Goodwill program.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the
Yeah.
that's
My job that I do. I tell you from 1:30 to 10 o'clock at night.
Gotcha. Okay.
Reverend Emery, right? Emery.
Emery Lee.
Emery, I was got a chance to be on his podcast for a small period of time that he does actually out of the Goodwill Opportunity Center, which is I love that place. They're doing such good work there.
Yes,
It's powerful.
Man,
I have a two-part question for you though.
Yeah.
So you said praise God that you get to come home at night and you feel safe. Do you ever feel fearful of, because you're fighting the fight, you're going on the other side, right? Is there do you ever feel fearful that a gangbanger or someone that you're trying to come to might come after you because of you're trying to pull people out of the lifestyle? Does that fear ever cross your mind?
No, because you know why, like Reverend from Smiser said, and you would have to really know me to understand this. I'm a well-known, respectful guy in my community, right? And where I'm more respectful of, not the guy that I used to be, they respect me for the guy that I am today.
Praise God.
The guy who's helping kids, who's trying to stir young men down the right path. A guy who's out here, boots on the ground, trying to stop the gangbangers, trying to get the gun. These guys respect me for that. They don't, and don't get me wrong, like I was saying earlier, it's some guys that is rebellious to it. They don't want no parts of it. And I respect that because I'm trained to know that if you and him are gangbangers together and I'm talking to him and you saying, come on, man, don't listen to that shit. But he might tell you, because you look up to him, he might say, hold up, man. He might be talking about something. And then he'll listen to me. And you might be, well, man, you can listen to this shit I'm going on. And you'll walk on the way. But he's listening. And I done had that to happen. And he'll join the program and change. Then he'll come back to you and say, hey, man, he's serious about that. He ain't playing. So he know me. And then like a lot of these guys, I know their parents, I know their grandparents, and they really respect me. But I've never actually had no one to ever pull a gun on me. I ain't never had nobody to really disrespect me or nothing like that, because I'm well known and well respected in the community. And if they tell me they don't want to be a part of it, I walk away. I just, leave it be, as they say.
That's good. Second part of the question is, should the guys that you're going after and you're trying to get them, should they be fearful as well? Or should they be in the same light where they shouldn't be afraid? Because I assume there could be a listener that hears this, that maybe they want to leave, but they're scared of like, hey, I can't walk away. I mean, you've heard it said like the only way out of a gang is in a box, right? So it's like, should those guys be fearful, and why should they not be?
Well, some of those guys, they have no reason. The only thing that they have fearful about, if they're like talking to the police or something. But they know me, so they know I'm not on no police stuff or nothing like that. And so if they're doing something that they know that could get them in trouble with they ex-gangbangers or they gangbangers or whatever, then yes, they fearful. But for the most part, they have nothing really to be fearful of. So yeah, to answer your question, no, they don't have nothing to be fearful. The only thing that like some of them can't, like what you said, they can't get out. And those are the ones that say, man, I ain't with it. I don't care about what Goodwill's talking about. I don't care what you talking about, man. And then some of them, I've had some of them to pull tens of thousands of dollars on me right there on the corner. Why am I gonna go get a job or work? Look at you see all this money I got, OG? What the hell I'm gonna go work for McDonald's or go work at Kroger's, and I respect that, because, and I can relate to that because I used to be that guy. You know what I'm saying? So I can really relate to some of these kids' stories and how they grow up. And that's why I guess I do the work that I do, because I love my job. I tell people that all the time. Well, my daughter, she hates my job, right? Because she feel like it's dangerous. She don't feel like sometimes that they don't listen. She feel like they're not listening to me. But she doesn't understand because they do listen to me. You know, like these young men, people told me when I first started doing this work, man, why are you wasting your time with them young knuckles here? They're not gonna listen to you. Nobody's gonna. But wonder if I felt the same way that they felt. Wonder if I felt like, well, they ain't gonna listen to me, so I ain't gonna deal with them. I'm gonna leave them. But for the most part, my kids, they listen to me. And believe it or not, some of these guys who I approach, they really want to change. I know this. I feel it in my heart. But you're afraid of what he's gonna say or think about you. So that's why you don't want to listen to what I got to say, because you're afraid of what he gonna think.
First, Smiser, before we started this, you were talking about your mission trip to Nigeria for 31 days, and the gentleman who, it's like Jesus, who would wash your feet, right? To Alice's point earlier, people are flying out of Louisville every day, flying over West Louisville to go on a mission trip. The mission field's right there, right? Well, why? Why are they flying over Louisville and not more people pouring into West Louisville?
I would contend, I don't know if you read the book, When Helping Hurts, which is really a phenomenal book that talks about, are we helping, are we hurting? One of the things that I think that causes, to ask you a question, is that if I fly to Nigeria, to Africa, or whatever, and we dig 2 or 3 wells, and we in a week, and we come back, then it gives us a sense of pride that we went over and we helped some people and we dug a well, and so now hopefully they're going to have water. But do we know if the well still existed 2 months from that point or a year from that point? Well, the difference is this. That is an area where I may or may not ever go back to. And so it doesn't bother me whether or not that well was a successful well or not. But to pour into West Louisville, then you're talking about my own area, my own yard, what I have to look at, what I have to face every day. And can I be genuine as I actually go to do this work, knowing that the responsibility or being responsible or having to look at it again and again and again will make a difference. I think a lot of times it's kind of like the person who wants to give you $5 and say, here you go, now get out of the way. I don't really want to be bothered with you, rather than the person who says, you know what, I'm going to give you $5, but I'm going to also make sure that you understand how to be responsible with this. I'm going to also make sure that you have the opportunities. And just kind of I don't know if this is totally related, but prior to the riots here in Louisville in 1960, the most productive area in the city was from 28th and Broadway to 28th and Dumenil. Everything, the dollar turned over so many times in that community that no other place in the city of Louisville was as productive as that particular area. And at that time, there was the banks there was hardware there was restaurants there. Everything that you needed, you could get right there. After the riots took place, then no insurance company would insure none of the business because of the riot. And for 30 years, the economic level of the area of West End went plummeting and has yet to recover after over 30, 40 years now. Of that area being one of the most productive areas. So it gets back to Mr. Greg saying the guy who pulls out a wad of money, tens of thousands of dollars, it's about economics. It's about how do I survive, and this is the choice that I make when it comes to that. So when we look at mission, then we have to understand that it's not a handout, it's a hand up, and there's a big difference in a hand out and a hand up. You give me a hand up, and I can run till I reach the next hurdle, and I'll try to jump that hurdle. And if I can't, then what I need is a little boost to get me over there. Then I can run on further until I run into another. And I think that is where we are in our struggle to help these young men see that you got some help to help you get over the hurdle, some of the challenges that you are going to be faced with or that you are faced with. And so I think therein lay the difference. It is economics, however we cut it, slice it, or dice it.
One thing that stuck out to me when you were saying that too is I'm a little convicted at the moment. We're running the mission trip soon to Romania. And, I did the math just in my head and I was like, man, we're taking 10 guys. It's roughly $3,000 a piece to go on that mission trip. That's $30,000. Imagine if you just took that same 30,000 and you invested into a business down in the West End that could then provide economics, provide opportunities, provide things. So I think when I hear you say that, there needs to be more. It's not just you need businesses, you need thriving businesses and opportunities for people in that general community to be able to offer not handouts, but hand ups. How can you teach a man to fish opposed to handing them a fish and then walking alongside them? So that'd be a challenge. I would love to challenge people, even our viewers or anyone, like how could we put businesses in that community that could provide opportunities?
Well, I would go one better than that. I would say, how do we take that same $30,000 and seek and find a ministry or mission already in the West End that's already doing the work, that's got a good track record, and invest in them so that they can continue to do and even do bigger and better things. Even in the book When Helping Hurts, the author was suggesting that that same $30,000 would have been better spent if they had found a well digging organization in where they were going to dig a well and invested in that organization. I mean, you can vet that organization now. You know they doing good work. You know they have a good history. That's what I love about you talking about your job, my job as the executive director of the Baptist Fellowship Center. It's a 114-year-old mission center that has done great work with whatever meager resources that we've had to work with. But given the resources that we've had to work with versus the outcomes that we've been able to accomplish, I mean, it will shatter anybody's chart in the effect that we've had on the lives of the people that have come through that center. Without the resources that would be required anywhere else to make that happen. So I think that we have to again think about: is there anybody? What mission? What ministries? What services do we have in West Louisville that's already doing the work, where an influence of resources would actually take them to the next level?
That's good. It reminds me real fast. I was about to say something that reminds me of when I was in the military. We would even experience things like that where people would go and build wells and help people, but then you leave and you come back like 12 months later and the well's torn up, it's all gross, and it's a reminder that like you can build something great for someone, but if there's not someone to help teach them how to maintain it, right? So it's what I'm hearing you say is giving to the ministries of people who are already serving it. They're going to help not only maintain but sustain
Exactly.
and elevate it to where it's going to actually beneficial, not just build a well.
Exactly.
Right, but it's going to actually, someone's going to teach people how to maintain it, keep hold of it, and how to even develop more and more and more. So that's encouraging to hear you say.
I want to go to Craig, a couple things. I want to go back to, I got two questions for you, maybe three. But first, you should still be in prison with your sentence. But you said earlier, but God, that's why you're here.
Yes.
When you were in prison, did you have a moment that you heard from God that he's saying, do you hear me now? Greg, are you ready to? Did you have that moment that
Yes, I did.
Man, it changed?
And I'm gonna tell you the moment I had when my mom passed away, right? I was calling the God and asked God why, right? I was asking God why, why my mom, and God spoke to my heart and he said, I'm taking your mom and I'm putting her in a better place because I know what your mom mean to you. And I did this to get your attention, and I had a real tough, because I just couldn't understand. As I told you, my mom was my number one fan, but she was my number one critic. And I just couldn't understand, me being in the situation that I was in, why did he take my mom? But he took my mom and put her in a better place. And he knew God knew that was the way to get my attention, and believe it or not, that is what changed my life. That's when I really began to start reading my Bible, going to church, because and when I went to that funeral and seen my mom laying in that casket, I knew that it was real, you know, this is real. I mean, I'm sitting here watching my mom lay in this casket. I'm never gonna see her again. I'm never gonna be able to tell her how much I love her. And that's when my life really began to change for the best. And so, yes, I did have a real talk with God, and that's what changed my whole life around, is me losing my mom in prison.
So anybody hearing this right now that is like doing drugs, explain to them life in prison. It's not what you watch on TV. I mean, give somebody a 30-second footnote of what it's really like in a maximum security prison.
Hell. And the reason I say that is because I just think about today how I can wake up in a real nice king size bed. I can go to the bathroom when I want to. I can go in my refrigerator when I want to. I can take a shower when I want to. I can go in the bathroom and take a crap, and I can shut my door in peace. In prison, you don't have a door to shut when you use the bathroom. You don't have shower curtains up in the shower in prison. You're in a shower with 30 men. You using the bathroom. There's another guy right next to you urinating while you sitting on the toilet. These are things that you learn to respect when you in society. The privacy that you have out here that you don't have in prison. You know, so that's one thing that people don't realize is when you're out here, the freedom that you have. In prison, you don't have no freedom. They tell you when to eat, when to sleep, when to crap, when not to crap, when to cut your light off, when to go to bed, when to wake up, you know, when to clean your room. You have these things that in prison that you don't have the luxuries out here. You know, and like I say, it's hell. You know, every day that you wake up in prison, you got the same thing. People beating, noisy, loud. You know what I'm saying? It's hell.
Mm.
It really is.
Yeah, I hate to wrap up. I mean, we're right over our limit, man. I will say right now, we need to have these two guys back on to dive into some deeper topics and everything. I'm grateful that both of you all were able to show up today and just to hear your story and hear both your stories and how you come together to serve the same cause, same city, same everything is just powerful.
How, though, can our listeners get involved with SOY?
Well, they can actually call the Baptist Fellowship Center. The phone number is 502-774-2734. They can go on our website, which is www.bfcenterky.org. Leave us a comment. We'll be happy to certainly talk with anyone that wants to be involved, and we'd love to have them.
Love it. Well, usually I close in prayer, but Reverend, I feel like I would love for you to close us in prayer this time and pray over our listeners, but pray over the city and our community come together to continue this.
And is there anything else you guys want to say before we close this up?
I just want to say I thank you guys for having us, for to sit down on this podcast and talk and give me a chance and Reverend Smiser a chance to tell our story. And hopefully that what we said today will encourage somebody who may be going through the similar things that I was going through in my life. And maybe it's something that I said that could get them on the right path to change their life around.
Amen. Reverend Smiser.
Well, I agree. I certainly thank you for this opportunity to come and share what God is doing. And God is doing some amazing things at the Baptist Fellowship Center. And we're super excited about the possibilities of impacting lives, because when it's all said and done, when our time is up and we leave here, the only question that needs to be answered is, did I help somebody else along the way? And I think that's what the gospel is all about, is spreading the good news of Christ, that some people can be impacted and their lives can be changed for the better. And I think that's what we're trying to do.
Amen. And every time I've seen you both, it's just, you're full of joy.
Yeah.
It's just peace and joy. You know, we're so grateful. And Alex and I, we are doing a function, our Men in Jesus, and we're bringing people from the East End down to the West End. But I want to even make it bigger than what he and I even talked about. I mean, the whole mission, my mind's just racing right now. So we'll be in touch soon. But if you pray us out.
We'll be happy to. Oh God, how we love you. We adore you. We magnify your most holy and righteous name. We're grateful and thankful for like-minded people, God, that you and only you can bring together to make a difference in the lives of others, to share the gospel of Christ and to let people know how much God really loves them, how much God wants them in a better place, a better situation, and that he has provided people that will be used to do just that. We're praying for this listening audience, those who would view this podcast, those who would actually take a moment to sit down and look at their own lives and how God can use them to be a blessing to someone else, because we realize, God, that we are blessed to be a blessing. You bless us, God, and you expect us to be a blessing to someone else. So we understand a little better when David said, my cup runneth over. God, you filled our cups even to the overflow. And so please allow us to take this overflow and utilize it for the benefit and betterment of someone else. We thank you again, God, for an opportunity to share. We thank you, God, for everything that you've done. We humbly submit at this point, God, to your will, your way, your word, and your work. Give us the strength, God, to go forward. We're praying and looking for you to move in our situation, move from this podcast that's going to make a difference. In the name of Jesus, I pray. Amen.
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 Thanks, brothers.
Amen.
Thank you, guys. Don't leave yet. She always comes in and takes